property taxes would essentially shift from hangar owners to other property owners within the city and county. That's a pretty astounding admission. So I'm going to read it again, just so you get the impact of it. He says, if property hangar values decline due to reversionary lease provisions, which everybody knows that reversionary leases are worth zero at the end, property taxes would essentially shift from hangar owners to other property owners within the city council. And that's other property owners. That includes homeowners. And that's how the taxes will be made up. It's an automatic type thing.
That's something that I would
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting malfeasance here, but it's a sneaky tax, right? Because it's a very slow drip over time where additional revenue requirements are not much from year to year, right? But if you look at it over the whole, it's a starting number. So it wouldn't be something that would be noticed by the citizens, likely, because it would be such a minimal tax year to year, but it would be a consistent tax increase that over time would be significant.
It's a backdoor tax. It's one of those taxes that the public doesn't get to vote on. You guys make these reversionary hangers. It's going to happen over the next 30 years. At the end of it, they will be picking up all the tax. They'll have to increase to maintain the same budget. And what I'd like to say is that we as a group don't understand why anybody would advocate to erode a tax base with reversionary leases, even though they acknowledge doing so would shift the tax burden from the hangar owners to the homeowners within the city and county. I don't think people would be happy with this if they knew what was going on with this. I think we'd have a room full of citizens demanding non-reversionary leases. Another question I have for you. Why would anyone be willing to forego 45 years of higher tax revenues produced by non-reversionary hammers without shifting the tax burden to homeowners and instead gamble on an array of unknown costs, revenues, and problems 30 years from now that can't be accurately projected at this point? And I contrast that with non-reversionary values at the airport that will increase and result in building an immediately increasing tax base at the airport that may actually lower the tax rate of property owners. And it's available now for you guys to spend, the city to spend. You don't have to, I know you have the same budget. Mr. Anderson explained that pretty well in his memo. But in the end, it's still the same thing. You're shifting the tax burden from hangar owners to homeowners. Now, I said there's two things that we agree with. The other thing that we agree with Mr. Anderson on is in page 4 of his memo, where he says the hangar owners group and he could generate reams of information for the council to review with differing opinions on this matter. And that's exactly what I said, was referring to Mrs. Potter, when you were asking questions about opinions, and he's citing that one manual. So again, we agree with that statement. He has one opinion, I have another. I can support mine, he can support his. We can go back all day on this. So what I would say, the challenge to do is let's stop debating the minutiae and the unknowns 30 years from now. It's wise to remember that there is a huge difference in FAA language and something being required versus being recommended, versus encouraged, suggested, inferred. And there's a difference between guidance and guidelines. And the manual, the ACRP manual, is simply a guideline. It's not required. So I say it again, Mr. Anderson is correct. For every quote he provides from the ACRP report 47 and other sources and studies, our hangar owners can provide a counter to it, with many of our quotes coming from the exact same ACRP document he used. Accordingly, our hangar owners also agree that there has been enough spending of taxpayers' money on consultants, data, analyses, and trying to determine uncertainties that simply cannot be projected 30 years out from now. There's been enough talking, and I really sincerely and respectfully say it's time for the City Council to make a decision. Now, there are a few things that we disagree with as well. Again, on page 4 of the memo, Mr. Anderson says, adoption of the document with non-reversionary leases that you're considering tonight is premature until more data analysis can occur to determine whether reversionary or non-reversionary leases best suit the city's interests while providing a fair return to hangar owners. That's a direct quote. Hey, this comes, he's calling for more data, more analysis, more time, more everything. This comes after the city has already spent 8 years and $16,000 on consultants that have resulted in competing analysis and have solved nothing. It also comes after the ABS report was stored away for many years with few people other than Dave Hansen even knowing that it existed. But now, Mr. Anderson says if we only had more data and just one more analysis, we might be able to make a better decision. Does anybody really believe that? I don't. And at what cost to the city if you do believe it? There was also an email received this morning sent from Mr. Anderson to the Mayor and Council in which a suggestion was offered of stripping the future leasing recommendations from the lease rates and charges policy document that you're considering, so that it can be added to the document at a later date once the leases working group has completed their analysis and made a recommendation. Well, there are several flaws with that suggestion. First, the working group that's being referred to falls under the authority of the Airport Advisory Board. They will, when it's formed, report to the Airport Advisory Board. And that board has already made a unanimous decision to recommend to you 30-year non-reversionary leases. So if you were to drag it back to the working group, it's sort of going around the airport board. But secondly, with the call for more data and analysis, and then the call to exclude the type of leases for future leases in the document, the net result of either request is simply to delay the entire process. We've been at this 8 years. We don't need more time. We don't need to spend more money. Our hangar owners sincerely ask you to not concede to what would be another unnecessary delay. Again, the city has already spent enough time and money, 8 years and $16,000 on this matter, and more than enough analysis, data, and energy for the City Council to make a wise, informed decision. There are no missing dots here. All you need to do is connect them. The data is in front of you. The opinions are there. The problem is that you're not going to find data that's going to say 100% sure it's this way. So what we believe the solution is actually lies within Heber City's own values as a community, and each one of you and your values. We don't believe anyone here in Heber wants to gamble the city's future on a policy that lacks a realistic, accurate business plan that might, and I emphasize might, provide larger returns, sometimes 30 years or more in the future. And we are also certain that nobody in Heber City supports the idea of shifting a hangar owner's property tax payments to homeowners in the city and county, as Mr. Anderson has candidly stated would be the case with reversionary leases. Lastly, there have been many enlightening discussions by airport board members the past 8 months that we wish you could have experienced. So I'm going to provide you with just one, it's very short, from the August 2013 meeting that eloquently states just a few of the reasons, just a few of the many reasons our hangar owners overwhelmingly support the airport board's 30-year non-reversionary recommendation.
All right, so you say after 30 years, then the city now owns the hangar, and you're saying that that is now a cash generator for the city. So let me ask you this. So now you're talking about maintaining 30-year-old hangars, upgrading 30-year-old hangars, all those things that go with that. The hangar rental. Why would the city not be better off when that reversionary, the non-reversionary lease expires? If they like the situation, they can extend the lease. If they don't like the situation, or the state of the hangar, well, thank you very much. Take your structure, return it back the way it was, and have somebody else show up. Or whatever development occurs, they can do what they want to do with it. Or have somebody else show up and go build me another new hangar, and now at least that to you for another 30 years, and I got a new hangar. The reason you run these airports with all these old dilapidated hangars is because of what you first described. You go, wow, we're going to own this thing after 30 years. Guess what? It's going to look like a piece of junk. It's going to cost a fortune to maintain, and hangar doors are going to fall off. And then you have 40 of these things that look like junk. With the idea being that this is going to be a cash generator. So you take a little bit of lease rate. By the way, those are rental things. People, 1978, 182, something like that. But they're not going to be high rent payers. So now you're in with a bunch of old hangars, falling apart, with all the maintenance requirements that have to go with that, to collect a little bit of rent from a whole bunch of people with old airplanes. I'd be very hard pressed to
building, if you will, another hangar owner. You know, we want them to take care of the building, because if it's a reversionary, I mean, I'm still of the opinion that there's really no advantage or reason to go overboard at trying to maintain something that you lose. You know, and
For example, what's all that to do with selling fixed on buildings? You know?
Mr. Boyer's about, yeah, it's kind of hard to understand. Yeah, probably best to take a few comments there.
Thank you. It was almost finished anyhow, but the airport board member was asking, I would add this one to it, yeah, what's Salt Lake Airport going to do with their reversionary buildings that they took back at the hangar center down here, largely. And they torn them down, they're tearing them down and redeveloping them. But what I wanted to really make the point of that is not just this one conversation, but there were literally dozens of conversations like this, interchanges between airport members. If anybody thinks that this vote for the non-reversionary leases to recommend to the City Council was done on a whim, it wasn't. It was done after lots of hard work, lots of discussion, and lots of back and forth. And that's how it was done. So as a hangar group, we very respectfully ask each of you to please not to delay this decision any further and go ahead and approve the documents submitted to you this evening to formalize the airport board's unanimous recommendation for a 30-year non-reversionary lease. And in closing, thank you very much for allowing us to participate in this matter that affects all of our airport stakeholders, including the taxpayers of Heber City and Wasatch County. Questions?
I have a comment. I'm not sure it's a question. We've been given an awful lot of information tonight and prior meetings. Tonight, to start with, we were told, first of all, the City Council butt out of the advisory boards, let them make the decision themselves, come to us, and tell us what we ought to do. But don't be rushed into it. You told us that it's been studied for 8 years and $16,000, and we all have been inundated for 8 years with all this information. We got 2 council members that have been on the council for 3 months, 1 that's been on for a little over 2 years, and 2 that's been on off and on for 6 years. And one side of it says you need to get out of the airport business, let the advisory board tell us what to do, and take your time, analyze it, and decide what to do. You're telling us that it's been rammed down our throats for 8 years, and you told this council four times in 20 minutes that we are intentionally, well, not intentionally, we are shifting the tax burden from the airport owners to the taxpayers by going reversionary. Okay? That very likely is true, but from my point of view, I don't want to make a decision tonight after what I've sat through for 2.5 hours. And a couple hours before that, and I read a lot of stuff in the last 2 or 3 months, and I'm still confused. And I don't want to be accused of making a decision without being fully informed, but I'm not going to take 8 years to study it. I will make a decision that I feel good about, but it's not going to be tonight as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's honorable, and my intent by saying that, and I did say about doing a decision there, but my intent is to say I don't think we need yet another analysis. I don't think we need to go back and undo something just so we can reconsider it another time. I think we have a recommendation before you, and I think if you need more time, you take the time you need, but you can come up with a good decision. This idea that we need more data is just wrong.
Well, I don't know. After I've studied it, I might say, well, what about this or what about that? And maybe I'll have to do some reading on my own. Maybe people can do it nowadays with Google without all the analysis and money spent.
So one question I was, the email that came from the game and Dale's comments were, it appears that there ought to be higher lease rates for non-reversionary than reversionary lease rates, but no one's ever talked about what that rate ought to be. That's some of the analysts I'm saying. Where is the point where non-reversionary leases are more advantageous to the city versus reversionary leases?
And when you're dealing with a scenario with a reversionary lease where you're not taking possession of it 30 years from now, I don't think any businessman in this country would try to run a business planning 30 years out, not really knowing. You don't know. The bottom line is there are too many unknowns. If you look at the Niederhauser data study, there will be 2 pages listed there of unknowns and other things. But the unknowns are important. I know you would have to have
your assumptions.
Your CPA. Well, some of them were assumptions, but then there were a lot of unknowns. So we tried to eliminate the unknowns by just limiting the taxes, just put the taxes because taxes aren't. We know where they are now, and we know how to figure out when to